In problem number 12 from the MSP practice test, we're looking at scientific notation, which usually is used when you have extremely large numbers or very small numbers, and oftentimes in science situations, like in the case of this one where you're looking at the distance from the sun of the Earth and Mars, and they're a really long distance away, and so writing the distance in actual miles would be lots of numbers. So we use this kind of abbreviated version, 9.1 times 10 to the 7th power miles, and 2.05 times 10 to the 8th power miles for Mars. And what those numbers mean, we can actually just kind of use a calculator to see that if we actually calculate those numbers out, take a calculator and go 9.1 times 10, and there's this exponent key here on your calculator that a lot of calculators have, this up arrow which represents the exponent. So if I push that button, it puts a little up arrow thing in there, and I can push to the 7th. So there you see 9.1 times 10 to the 7th power. If I enter that, you can see it's a very large number. It's looks like 91 million miles. And so a scientific notation version would be this, and the standard notation would be the 91 million miles. So I'm actually going to write that in here by the problem. It's equal to 91 and then 6 zeros. And we can kind of understand maybe a little bit about how scientific notation works just by looking at this 9.1 times 10 to the 7th power. Well, if you take that decimal point and move it 7 places to the right, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, then you'll actually get that number, 91 million miles. And we could do the same thing with the 2.05. Could actually take and put it in the calculator as 2.05 times 10, and use this up arrow key, this one right here, 10 to the 8th power, and we can see that that's now 205 million. There's 6 zeros there, and then the 205, and so I'm going to actually go ahead and write that in standard form. 205 million miles. That's how far Mars is from the sun. So we have these two distances, and again we could look at how this number is found in scientific notation by just looking at the 8. When you multiply 10 to the 8th power, our number system is decimal system, so every power is one space or one decimal point move to one direction or the other. In this case, larger. This is a large number, so if I take that decimal point and move it 8 places to the right, so I'm going to actually, if I imagine it was right there, go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 places to the right. That's what that number would be. And so now you can see these numbers in what's called scientific notation and standard form. Scientific notation, 2.05 times 10 to the 8th power miles is the same as 205 million miles. And so now I can use this to answer the question, how much farther is Mars from the sun than the Earth? So we really want to know the difference between these two distances. And so I'm really, in my mathematical writing, I would think of it like this: 2.05 times 10 to the 8th minus 9.1 times 10 to the 7th. So that's my calculation. Or I could write it out as I have it in standard notation, 205 million minus 91 million miles. And the reality is using a calculator for either of these, I could do this with scientific notation, actually just put the numbers in like I see them, 2.05 times 10 to the 8th power minus 9.1 times 10 to the 7th power. So I could actually just put them in as you see them in scientific notation and get an answer. And the answer is 114 million miles. In standard form, I'm going to actually put that answer over here because I've been asked in this problem to also put it in scientific notation. And I want to just make sure that you can see that, I'm going to get this answer if I actually put these numbers in as well. So if I go 205 and then 6 zeros, and then I subtract 91 million, 6 zeros. So the hard part about this is making sure I actually get the right number of zeros in there. I think I have an extra 0. So if I delete a 0, delete that one because I should have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 zeros. That's why scientific notation can be helpful. And I get 114 million like I expected. And so now the challenge is I got the answer in standard notation or standard form. What's the answer in scientific notation? So now I have to kind of work the other way. And in scientific notation, you always have one number and then a decimal point. So I'm going to have a 1.14 times 10, and now the question is to what power? And the way to figure that out is to figure out how many places you have to go from here, from where the decimal point would be, to get to right here. And you got 3, 6, 7, 8 numbers before I get to that spot. So that tells me that it's 10 to the 8th power. And if you're not sure, you can always put it in the calculator and go 1.14 times 10 to the 8th power, and if you just hit the equal or the enter button, it should give me the right answer there. And so you can see that these two match. So that's what 1.14 times 10 to the 8th power is equal to in scientific notation. So that's how much further the Earth is, or the Mars is, from the Sun than the Earth in scientific notation. And that actually answers this question, shown you my work, shown you it both in scientific notation form and standard form, and this is how you would show this type of problem with scientific notation. This one might be one you want to watch again just to understand this whole idea or concept of taking numbers and putting them from standard form to scientific notation and the other way around. These exponents tell you how far to move the decimal point one way or the other in the case of large or small numbers.